You know, folks, I realize the word gaslighting gets thrown around a whole lot these days, and I use that word every day. Hell, I even put it on a shirt, and that's because I refuse to be gaslit. But if I'm being honest with you, I get tired of using the word, but at the same time, I get tired of being gaslit. And the level right now of gaslighting from MAGA over this whole Pete Hegseth thing is on a level that even I thought they could never reach. I didn't know they could go this high with their hypocrisy. And I didn't know they could go this high and this extreme with their gaslighting on this one. I have never in my life seen them struggle so hard to put a different spin on this one and make us think that we're all crazy and make us think that we really didn't see what it is that we saw. They have sat back and made jokes. They've shared satirical articles. They've blamed it on fake news. They've blamed it on the journalists. They've blamed it on everyone but themselves. And we could sit and go back and we could sit here and we could roll countless clips of them in the past saying that people should be locked up for this type of thing. People should lose their job. People should be held accountable. People should go to jail. Lock her up. We could sit here and spend the rest of the night showing them talking about how catastrophic a move like this would be. But now, unfortunately, all we're going to be able to do is sit back and watch them try to put their own spin on this and gaslight us into believing that we didn't see what we saw. But recently, former Ambassador Susan Rice sat down with Ben Meiselas on the Midas Touch Network, and they had a really good conversation, and Susan brought across a lot of great points that I wanted to highlight. So we're going to show here where Ben played her the clip of Tulsi Gabbard, sorry, I can't even talk today, of Tulsi Gabbard saying that none of the material was classified, and Susan goes on to explain how that was pretty much all bullshit. So we're going to show Tulsi Gabbard's response, and then we'll get Susan Rice's explanation. Take a look.
Share with you what Tulsi Gabbard said during a hearing in the Senate. She said there was no classified materials. I read it. I want to get your take on it, but let's play this clip.
Contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material.
Ambassador, you've been able to see what's been published publicly. Is there classified information in there? And what do you make of her response?
It's laughable. Let me explain why I say that, Ben. And by the way, it's great to be with you. Any meeting of the national security principals, this is the cabinet level senior most national security team, and that's what this was, is by definition in itself on almost every possible occasion, those are classified discussions because even the topics that they choose to discuss tells our adversaries something of relevance. So having a meeting of the National Security Council principals is by itself a classified matter. Then next, here we are talking about whether or not and when and how the United States should attack a foreign adversary. The fact of that conversation and its contents is inherently classified because if an adversary were to have the ability to learn of those plans and intentions in advance, then that adversary could prepare, both by hardening their defenses or evading attack, but more worryingly, by going after the United States and our assets as we conduct the attack. So military plans and operations are inherently classified. Add to that we know from Jeff Goldberg's reporting that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, shared sensitive military plans, including attack targets, timing, sequencing, the ordnance or the bomb types that they were going to use. That is all inherently classified. Tulsi Gabbard is either lying or being deliberately evasive by trying to say no intelligence material was shared.
Now, I'm no expert on none of this, but I don't see how in the world you can spin this to say that this wasn't classified or that this wasn't sensitive information when, folks, it's all out there for everyone to see because it accidentally got sent over to a journalist. It's one of the craziest stories that we've ever covered here on the channel, and I don't think people understand just how serious it is, because MAGA is always going to go out of their way to try to just smooth everything over, like everything's okay, nothing to see here, keep moving. That's always going to be their approach, and their followers will always roll with it. They'll always just jump through whatever hoop they tell them to jump through next and not see the seriousness of this issue. They don't understand how that this is absolutely causing our allies to no longer trust us, and it's also causing dictators to get really excited when they see things like this happening, and they see how weak it makes us look on the world stage. Yeah, they'll sit there and they'll pat Donald Trump on the back all day long, and he'll feel good being surrounded by these strong men, but they're sitting back laughing at him. And they're loving every minute of this. Now, a special envoy to Russia from Trump, Steve Witkoff, was allegedly in Moscow while this chat was going on, and Ben talked more to Susan Rice in this next clip about that. Take a look.
Donald Trump's special envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, was allegedly in Moscow while he was on this group chat. The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, testified today that he wasn't even aware today that Witkoff was in Moscow when I knew about it, because it was a matter of public attention. How dangerous is that? Do you believe the Russians now have all of that information and potentially more? What can you give us based on what you know about these things?
Well, yes, the Russians have whatever Witkoff was doing or saying on his personal cell phone. The way Witkoff should have handled this, and the way this meeting should have been conducted, is Witkoff should have gone into the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and gone into their secure compartment facility and conducted his participation by video conference. That's how this whole thing should have happened. There should never have been a signal chat used as the vehicle for a discussion that involved anything sensitive regarding national security. The Russians undoubtedly have it.
So as I'm sitting there watching that, I'm reminded of a story that I've told here on the channel before, but for those of you that have never heard it, I'm going to repeat it because it goes right along with what we're talking about today. Back when I was a kid, I was sitting watching the news with my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran. And we're watching the news, and there's a segment happening on TV. And when the segment was over, my grandpa just sort of shook his head, looked at me, and said, "Well, I guess they were right. They're going to take us and not fire a shot." And he just got up and walked out of the room. And I remember as a kid sitting there listening to that going, how could someone take us without firing a shot? I mean, they would have to fire a shot to take us over, wouldn't they? No one could actually do that, could they really? And I just remember being puzzled with that, and I never followed up with my grandfather to ask him what he meant by it. And then years later, I learned that that was actually a quote from Nikita Khrushchev, who said, "We will take America and not fire a shot." And I asked my uncle years later, I said, why would my grandfather have said that? And he said, I believe it's because he could see the direction we were headed, and he could see how gullible people in America can be. He was disappointed in people in our part of the world back then. And we're talking like late 80s, early 90s when this story happened. And I was sitting there watching it with him. I was just a kid. But I can remember him having that feeling. And, you know, here he was, an old man near the end of his life at that point. And he's looking at his country going, we're headed down the wrong road. And he was thinking that all the way back then. And now you fast forward up to now, and I hear my dad saying things like, well, I may not be alive at the next election. I don't know if I will ever see our country get rid of Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or whatever MAGA nightmare comes next. And I don't know, the deeper we get in the weeds with this and the crazier these stories become every day, the more I catch myself going back to that story of we're being taken. And they didn't fire a shot. And we're sitting here trying our damnedest to get people to pay attention. We're trying our damnedest to get people to wake up. And they just refuse. It's one of the most frustrating things to do. I'm very grateful to have a platform like this where I can speak to people about the issues at hand. But there's a part of me that almost says, I wished I had a channel where I was just, reviewing boxing matches or something. I wish that politics was so boring that I could just have a wrestling podcast, But the issues at hand are so important now, and these stories are so important that we cover, that there's no way that we can back up. We have to keep moving forward, and we have to keep having these conversations, even if they do make us uncomfortable, and even if they do remind us of stories from our childhood where our grandparents tried to warn us. This is the moment that our grandparents was trying to warn us about. So I just hope that more people as we go will begin to wake up. But I truly appreciate everyone's support here on the channel. We're cruising toward 1 million subscribers, and I really appreciate y'all for getting us this far. We put that silver plaque on the wall last April, May, around that time. And now we're headed toward 1 million. We'll have a gold one hanging back there soon. And I really appreciate all of you for your support. If you like the kind of content I do and ever want to contribute a few bucks, I do have a Patreon, and it's linked in the description of this video. And I've been putting some pretty good stuff over there, talking to some cool people and playing some songs for the first time, and going into the studio and recording and things like that. So you might enjoy that type of thing. If you do, check it out. But I really appreciate everyone's support here on the channel, and we will just keep moving this needle forward. We have to. There's no backing up now, folks, and this is exactly what my grandpa was warning me about all those years ago, and we have to continue to warn people as these things keep happening. I know it gets depressing. Like I always tell people, take care of your mental health. Unplug if you need to, walk away, get back in the saddle, and get back at it, because, folks, we're going to be in for the long haul on this one.